Hello everybody, I'm Ashley and I'm going to run through hedging in the food industry for my teaching project. So let's begin. To begin, let's go over what hedging even is. So hedging is a risk management strategy that's employed to offset losses in investments. So it helps reduce risk, to keep it simple. But these hedging strategies involve derivatives such as options and futures contracts. And to keep it simple, a perfect hedge eliminates the risk of price movements. So it helps very volatile industries like the food industry. And because there's so many different types of options and future contracts, an investor can hedge against nearly anything like we're going to talk about later on will be cocoa. But besides that, this could be stocks, commodities like food, interest rates, or even currencies. So for this teaching project, we're going to be reviewing hedging in the food industry. So how does that even work? Food companies can use hedges to protect against sudden price moves, which has been happening a lot with the COVID pandemic, as I'll get to later on. But through hedging, they can smooth out some of these peaks and valleys in the commodities market by managing the risk through futures and options, like I talked about. And this can give them a better idea of what the cost will be like in the months ahead, which is crucial to budget planning and forecasting, like we learned about in this class. So how does hedging really work? Now that we know what it is, a strategy to help prevent risk, let's talk about how it works. So there's different types of derivatives, like I mentioned. The two that are most common are options and futures. And derivatives are securities that move in correspondence to one of the underlying assets. So this can be options, swaps, futures, and then forward contracts, like I've been mentioning. So how does this work for specifically the cocoa industry? So businesses that need to buy a ton of cocoa can hedge against the rising or falling cocoa price by taking a position in the cocoa futures market. So this would be like the Hershey Company, who I currently work for, and that's why I looked into this topic. So companies like the Hershey Company will buy cocoa from future exchanges instead of African countries like they normally would. So for other food companies, the basic strategy would be something similar, like entering a long-term contract with the big grain, dairy, or cocoa suppliers. So now let's look into hedging and Hershey. Like I mentioned, I do work for the Hershey Company, and I found this topic to be very interesting because of an article and a topic that was brought up earlier in my work. So in January 2021, Hershey turned to buying from reserves in trading centers like the New York rather than actually going to the cocoa producing countries. So ever since I worked for Hershey Company, we have been very aware of the cocoa producing countries and doing our part in sustainable cocoa producing and manufacturing. And so seeing this article about Hershey going towards hedging really caught my eye and made me want to learn more about the topic. So through the research that I was able to look into for Hershey Company and the hedging they have done last year, I saw some pros and cons. So some of the pros include minimized losses if the market would move up or down, which is the reason why hedging is a strategy. But additionally, with hedging, that also removed some additional costs that would come with physical market buying. So some of these costs include paying for a living income premium. That would be around 200 for the amount of chocolate coming in or cocoa. So while some people, don't mind paying that cost because they know it's going to the farmers that are making the cocoa, it does reduce that cost, especially if the price of cocoa is going up. So that's a pro for Hershey, but it's also a negative and a con. So under cons, I have that the one that I've learned through my research is that with hedging, you cannot control the quality of the beans that get delivered. So it's a little risky in that you can't really control what's going to be the final product coming your way. And then additionally, like I kind of mentioned, there is a negative social impact by not paying that living income. You're neglecting the farmers that are doing the work, which is part of Hershey's goal of being sustainable and having a really green thumb and ensuring that there's traceability through the cocoa supply chain. So by hedging, they kind of remove that a tad bit, but there are pros to hedging for Hershey specifically by removing those additional costs that come with the physical market buying. So then let's talk about cocoa futures because Hershey just got these in 2021 in January. Let's talk about what they really are. So cocoa futures are standardized exchange traded contracts in which the contract buyer, so the Hershey company, would agree to take delivery from the seller a specific quality of cocoa and then at a predetermined price. So where can you even purchase these? So cocoa futures can be traded at Euronext and then the New York Mercantile Exchange. And they're quoted in pounds per metric ton and then traded in different lot sizes for both of those trading sources. Now let's talk about the futures trading basics for cocoa. So, like we kind of mentioned already, there's less risk by going through cocoa futures trading, and you can decide when you want to get the product and then also the price. Additionally, you can employ a short hedge to lock in that selling price for cocoa. And you can also use a long hedge to secure a purchase price for the commodity they need. So there's both short and long hedges. And then additionally, cocoa futures can even be traded by speculators who assume the price risk that hedgers try to avoid in return for a chance to profit from favorable cocoa price movement. And then as we conclude, why is hedging so important right now? So the simple answer is that food makers are facing so unprecedented times in cost for their ingredients due to the COVID pandemic. As you might have noticed, commodity prices have surged and demand for consumers' goods have increased. Actually, the U.S. Agricultural Department has forecasted that average prices for wheat, corn, and soybean meal will continue to hover well above their averages through 2008, which of course will increase corporate budgets. And for the candy industry in particular, the New York cocoa prices for delivery have jumped more than 25%, which is the highest it's been since the COVID pandemic started. So, long story short, hedging can allow companies in volatile industries like the food industry more insurance in the future costs for forecast and budget reasons. And these are my references. Thank you so much for your time and looking forward to your feedback.